nervous being here, but I'm also very grateful to have the opportunity to share with you guys some of my insights. I've had an interesting journey so far, I guess, in my life. I've probably travelled more than most, over 40 countries, and taken literally 5 years off work to travel the world, and in doing so created a lot of space for myself to deeply inquire. My upbringing was somewhat mixed and turbulent. I think I was a bit of a troublesome child. I refused to eat food, basically, from the age of 2 to 11. Ate very little anyway. I had a theory that I just chose not to eat meat, and then took it on from there. Didn't eat vegetables or fruit either. I actually had to go to a clinic when I was 11 years of age, and went to an anorexic bulimic clinic where they taught me to eat. And from there, I had a bit of a strange, a series of coincidences, or let's say occurrences. From there, my mother passed away when I was 14. My sister ran away from home. So I had a few hardships to deal with. I think knowing how to deal with them was something that I didn't have the tools for as a kid. I pretty much created what I would say is a negative core belief, or what we choose to call a limiting core belief about myself, which I've still got. I call it George. He's over here right now. That I sort of managed to get through life in a way that was, I guess my negative core belief was that I'm not normal, I'm different from others, and in some ways not worthy. And so I proved, and I actually acknowledge negative core beliefs as being, I honour it as a gift, actually, my negative core belief, because from that I then made all the efforts to be normal, and I could associate with the nerds and the alternatives and the sporties at school, and I was able to relate with most people. And I now find myself in a position where I'm actually aiming to convince everyone that we're all the same. We are all the same, not different at all. I'm not on a physical level, but on a spiritual level. So I finished my schooling, not too bad, got kicked out of school end of year 11, but ended up in another school and finished my HSC, and then travelled the country for a year, got some freedom doing that. Then I joined the army, and the army was probably where I lost my freedom. But I had some fascinating experiences in the army, enjoyed my time very much, and saw a little bit of the world, served in East Timor, where I saw some active service, fortunately not having to fire at anyone or nor being fired at, but certainly my soldiers did. But I saw a lot of suffering there, and that sort of certainly triggered me into understanding this whole idea of suffering and pain. I've never really run from it. I've always sort of been more, if anything, curious of the suffering of others. So I then left the army, and literally a week later I travelled the world and ended up in India. And some of the stuff I'll tell you tonight I dare not, I'd say that you wouldn't believe, and I wouldn't expect you to believe, because I wouldn't believe it, and I still don't believe it, really. But I ended up in India, and through a series of coincidences ended up in an ashram with, some of you may have heard of a guru named Sri Bhagavan Satya Sai Baba, the guy with the big puffy hair. And there's various stories about him, but I basically had a very open mind when I went there. I was travelling with a girl at the time, and one of the first things we heard him say is, "I am God." It kind of blew me away a little bit, and the girl I was travelling with, she just left. She was out of there. But I had an open mind, and I was interested to hear what this was. I was so naive to yoga. I knew nothing about guru or yoga or anything to do with anything. I had a little bit of a background in spirituality. My parents were somewhat that way inclined. But so he said, here he says, "I am God," but then he also says, "So are you." He says, "The only difference is I know it." And so I was curious, and I hadn't heard of this philosophy at all. I've recently discovered that in fact it's well known. It's, authors like Marianne Williams and Don McGuell and Neil Donald Walsh and many other, even Jesus Christ perhaps, he said the Father and I are one. But it's a common belief. And so anyway, I inquired, and I really stuck around for a little while, and I looked at all the good deeds that he had done for mankind. I actually have the opinion that he's done more for humanity than anyone I know of in history, with free schools and free water and free hospitals, offering open heart surgeries. But I finally then put it out there to the universe. I said, well, hey, if you want me to believe that this guy's representing you, then you better show me something. You better prove it to me. Because I'd seen him from afar doing all these manifestations and miracles and what have you. And so the next morning I get front row And it's pretty difficult to get front row, but I get front row, and he comes up and he stops right next to me and he waves his hand, and out comes through his fingers this stuff called vibhuti, which is, it's ash, basically. It resembles the final stage of life. And, I'm watching it come out of his fingers. It's still pretty mind-blowing. It's hard to believe. Later that afternoon, I got second row, and he stopped on my right, and he did it again, manifested, and the stuff came out of his fingers. And that was sort of like the catalyst for me to start to believe, start to inquire a little bit deeper, and start to believe, I guess, the teachings of his, which just happened to be in relation to exactly what yoga's teaching these days. So it was really, though, after I left the ashram that things started to happen, that things got a little bit freaky. Like he'd always say, if you take one step towards life or God or whatever you want to call it, that God will take 10 towards you. And I'd never really done much stepping towards God, and all of a sudden I found myself praying and asking for things, and it just got to the point of ridiculous, that everything was happening. So many coincidences that it just, after 2 years I'm thinking, wow, how much more do I need? One of the final straws for me in developing faith in this philosophy of unified oneness, you could call it, was when I saw him do another manifestation, and it was just fake. It just looked fake. It was just, it's like, it's taken me years to develop faith, and all this stuff started going through my head. Like, that's not real. And my understanding of it is he intentionally does things that are fake. And the other times, I've got a friend in Neutral Bay who does yoga there, and he said that he had an interview with him, and 1 minute he went behind his back and pulled out this stuff and waved his hand and manifested something, and then in the same minute manifested a cloud and condensed the cloud. I've had far many more stories I could tell you about this, but anyway, for me, I saw this fake thing that just didn't look real, and so I prayed. I said it again. I threw it out there. I said, well, if you want me to believe, you have to remove these doubts. And a couple of days later, a lady I'd met said, hey, we're going down to Mysore. It's about 5 hours drive away. We're going to go and see these miracles that happen down there in this orphanage. And so I got in the truck and drove down there, and whilst I'm praying, I was like, let this be it, let this be what I need. And I was fortunate because I was the only guy that was allowed to. I should give you a history. In 1964, Sai Baba manifested these two pendants. One is of Shirdi Sai Baba, one is Satya Sai Baba. And these two pendants, when left in a jar, they weep. A substance called amrita, which is said to be the nectar of the gods, or scientists did a study on it and found it's secretions from the pineal gland. And so this stuff, and you can see it on YouTube actually, this stuff just fills up in the jar, just fills up, just constantly fills up. And so anyway, I was privileged enough to hold it in my hand. So I've got these two pendants in my hand, and they're weeping, and the guy's filling up a spoon and gives it to about 8 people in the group. Meanwhile, so I'm watching it, my mind's going, no, not happening, no, it's trick, no, it's false, no, it's a trick, no, I can't understand it. And it was the first time I really realised that I can't trust my mind. That what my mind tells me is true is perhaps untrue. And from there, my faith developed, my faith flourished. And in doing so, I've been able to experience a whole new way of living. And to be honest, I never imagined that life would be as amazing as it's proven to be. I certainly have other things that have happened along the journey, which, again, I wouldn't expect anyone to believe. An object falling out of ether landing in my lap in meditation, an object that I carry on me always. It's a long story that goes in line with it. And the reason I mention this is not to highlight myself, but rather, if anything, to give you the thirst for inquiry, the thirst to dive deeper than the superficial, the surface level stuff that we live our lives by, which we're so obsessed with the world that we forget about the spirit. So often, for many of us, we do.
What dropped out of the sky?
It's a Shiva Lingam.
What's that?
It's I don't normally show people this, but for the sake of this
wow,
crystal lingam, which I'd been having healings done and was told that I had a blockage on the left side of my subtle body. And so I'm sitting here in this ashram at the time, and I was praying. It was literally, as I prayed, I said, please, whatever needs to happen, I surrender. And next second, this thing just lands on my left leg and bounces off my leg and spins next to me. I open my eyes, and the first thought was, oh, look what's falling from the heavens, thinking someone had thrown something at me. And anyway, I look down, and this thing's just spinning right next to my leg. I look around me, and there's like no one there for about 30 metres that way. There's a guy over there about 5 metres, a guy about 10 metres behind me. And I'm thinking, no one's looking at me. So I pick it up, and it's hot. And I look up, I thought it must be from the chandeliers, because they had crystal chandeliers at the top of them. couldn't work it out. I had no idea what was going on, and so I ended up backing up and going and speaking to the guy that's 10 metres behind me. I said, "Hey mate, did you see what's going on? What's going on?" And he spoke Spanish. He's like, and he pointed up and said, Sabadell. That was all I got. Sabadell was the guys that run the security kind of in the ashram, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I went home, put it on my shrine, had no idea what to do with it, had no idea what it was all about, and sort of forgot about it for a couple of days, really, and went back and saw the healer, and he said to me, "It's a gift. I've actually seen 2 of these before, but generally Baba manifests them and gives them to the people rather than dropping them in the air. It just adds an element of doubt for me. Thank you very much." But either way, so I then, it still took me a long time to really believe. I still had doubts about it. I projected every possible idea of someone throwing it at me and all the rest of it, but how it could land and not keep skipping and all the rest of it, it just comes to my belief, I guess, now that it was a gift. For whatever reason, I have no idea. Maybe it's to show you guys here tonight to maybe create more thirst for your inquiry, because really that's what he calls, Sri Satya Sai Baba called his miracles, was calling cards. He did it not to show himself off, but to attract people, to attract people's attention. And in doing so, he says the greatest miracle, which is what I've found in my life, is the transformation of the heart, which is the transformation to love, which, like I said, I never imagined life could be so amazing. So, what I'm here for is to share with you the art of acceptance, which I certainly haven't achieved by no means. But I've certainly done a lot of thinking about it lately, about this art of acceptance and how we do it. I've been teaching it for years now. I teach probably more than most teachers do. I teach 14 classes a week. I have been regularly used to 17 classes a week. Big classes in V Club, some 80 to 90 people I used to be teaching there. Now it's 50 to 60. So I'm having a lot of contact with people and giving them these tools, these yogic techniques to gain presence. But I'm finding that really there are those that practice and experience and actually gain a lot of transformation from, and then there are those that don't. And so I realised through this process that really all I'm doing is giving knowledge. And then that knowledge, if put to practice, will become the individual's wisdom, and that wisdom will transform to love. And so these are the keys that I'd like to talk about tonight. Is 3 keys to the art of acceptance: is knowledge, or the end of knowledge, one can say also. Wisdom, which is perhaps the experiential knowledge, putting knowledge into practice, and love, which is perhaps something I cannot describe with words. I could describe what isn't love, but I'll have a go later on of explaining what love is. But wouldn't it be nice if we're all in a world where we could fully accept each other, everything? Is it possible? Is it feasible? Is it ever going to happen? There are a lot of people out there that believe it is, that it's actually happening right now as we see it. Often when I teach now, I'm starting to recognise it's not about, in this talk, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about consciousness. It's all about consciousness. As Eckhart Tolle would say, it's consciousness listening, consciousness talking. It's just consciousness. But we have this dualistic philosophy. Even though we might have a non-dualistic idea or intellectual idea, generally we live in a dualistic world. When you consider, I think the majority of the world live by dualism. Whereas there are others that perhaps live in, they call it non-qualified dualism, which means they recognise that, and you perhaps do recognise that we're part of one. We're not separate. We're not the one, but we're a part of one. For me, it's common sense, really. I guess my intellect has rationalised it so much that in the beginning, this planet was nothing but a ball of fire, a collection of space particles collided to create this big ball of fire. From this big ball of fire, a little bit of steam turned into water. We had a big, well, it was always fire, but above on the surface level we had water, and then the water turned to ice, and then the ice turned back to fire, and then back to water, and we've gone through all these ages from this one ball of fire. Here we are. Yet, perhaps I'll try and outdo you in every way possible. I prefer to be praised and not put down by you. I prefer to achieve and gain more and seek success and fear failure. All because of this idea of separation, this dualistic concept. So, what I'd like to really cover is knowledge in itself, is understanding knowledge and its place. Perhaps I could ask this question: does anyone know what's going on?
No.
Does anyone know what's really going on?
No.
Yeah, well, I certainly don't. I really don't know. I think we're all very spiritually confused. Yeah, we don't really know what's going on. We don't really know who we are or where we came from or where we're going. We've got all these ideas out there, but all these teachings, but they're all hypotheses until we actually experience it, which there are those that said they have. They say those that know do not say, and those that say do not know. So, I didn't realise it actually was probably one of the most liberating experiences or should I say, I was most encouraged by this thought, this realisation that I didn't know. The first time I realised that actually I really don't know. I later realised Socrates copied me, but one thing I know is I don't know. Socrates said this, but this is what I realised, that I don't know. And in knowing that I don't know, all my concepts about everything I needed to be and achieve and gain and do, all of a sudden just, I don't know if that's real anymore. Have to have a house, have to have a wife, have to have 2 kids, nice car, nice belongings, All this stuff dropped away, and it really happened for me when I inquired deeply, and I was actually studying. Actually, at the time, I was practicing Morna as well, which is complete silence. I just wasn't looking at anyone, wasn't talking to anyone, was just going deeply introverted. And I had a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, a great text on yoga, and I was reading it, and what I read totally contradicted what I read from my guru. And I should have went and sourced the book that, I read these teachings from my guru, and I picked it up, and I got this, and it just blew me, like, hold on, what do I really know? What do I know for sure? And I often encourage students to question this themselves as a spiritual process, is sit down sometime in silence and ask yourself, what do you know for sure? What do you really know for sure? Because we're so conclusive in our minds, we think we know. Have you ever met those people? They say, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I call them IKs. Mr. IK. Or ISDFK. Still don't fucking know. No, that's me. I don't know. But a lot of people just constantly claim that they do know, but we don't know. And I think there's so much to gain in realising that we don't know. The knowledge that we have, like knowledge is useful. And understanding knowledge, because knowledge forms our beliefs. Yeah? Our beliefs form our thoughts, and our thoughts form our emotions. It all starts with knowledge. So knowledge is useful. There is a philosophy, or you could even call it a religion. I wouldn't call it a religion, but a philosophy more so. It's called Vedanta. Has anyone heard of that? Anyone heard of Vedanta? Mm-hmm. Not many? If you've not heard of Vedanta, put your hand up. Okay, good. Yeah, so Vedanta is probably the most ancient of philosophies. It's some say originated in India. I'd say it's been maintained in India. It's like the great granddaddy, You've got Vedanta, then you've got Buddhism, then you've got Christianity, then you've got Islam. It's one of the oldest of mankind's scriptures, stemming from the Vedas. The Vedas are the ancient scriptures, and Veda means knowledge, and Vedanta means end of. It's the end of knowledge. Through the practices of Vedanta, one eliminates these belief systems that we have, these concepts, these thoughts, these emotions, until all that is left is pure consciousness. It seems like leagues well beyond our reach. My guru was the only actually teacher I know that says it's not. It's within our reach. But the main aim in this lifetime is to constantly contemplate that, whatever you call it, that. You can call it life, you can call it love, you can call it truth, you can call it God, you can call it Jesus, you can call it Krishna or Allah, whatever you want to call it. But constantly contemplating that will allow you to merge with that. There are those that actually realise that in their lifespan. They're called Jivan Muktis. A Jivan Mukti is one who's realised whilst in the body. Those people, generally, it's said, last 27 days because that's the time it takes for the body to perish as they give up eating and drinking. but there are those that continue to stay in order to fulfill their final desire, which is to serve others, to help others in gaining that realization. So knowledge is a useful tool, and certainly questioning your belief systems is really useful, because your beliefs are what drive you through your life. If you're unable to accept certain situations, it might well be because of what you believe about those situations. We, as Dr. Russ was talking about emotions, and we say loss is bad. I remember once saying this before a teacher training group. I said, tell me one thing that's bad. Tell me one thing that's bad in this universe. And the answer was cancer. And well, my mother died from a disease called scleroderma. I know what it's like to lose someone close. But I don't perceive cancer as bad. I don't perceive there's anything bad in the universe. I think cancer is a means of removing the body sooner than later, perhaps. I think loss is something that sends us or drives us inwards. There's actual benefit from loss. We actually inquire deeper into the higher truth of life, perhaps, before that's superficial, just on the surface level. So we just want to understand what our beliefs are about things, like why do we believe things to be bad? Why do we believe things to be good? Is it based upon a philosophy that's dualistic? Is there separation? Do we really believe that? Does anybody believe that anything is going to last? Is there anything going to last? Is there anything that's not going to decay? But yet, why do we cling on? Why do we hold on? Why do we have such attachment to things? I always use the example for attachment is everything comes, yeah? Everything goes. Common, yeah? Everything comes. Everything goes. Everything comes. Everything goes. Which is why my teacher would always say that pain is an interval between two pleasures. Pleasure is an interval between two pains. That's the roller coaster of life.
Yeah.
Yeah? But if we can start to recognize, if we can start to improve upon our knowledge and understand, these great wisdom teachings that are out there. There's so many fabulous teachings out there, and you don't need the whole works. It takes one match to light a fire. Well, it takes me a few matches, but actually one match to light a fire is ideally all it takes. So one spiritual truth, one bit of knowledge applied, practice, can actually turn into wisdom. And that's ultimately what we aim to move from. Knowledge is head stuff. Like in the past I've looked for a teacher. I remember going back to India and just wanted a teacher. I just wanted someone to tell me what to do, what to believe, what to think. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. I'm so keen to understand and to experience yoga. But when I went back there, the lesson that I got then was actually a teacher is for understanding. A teacher gives or helps you to understand. And understanding belongs to the mind. But as we are ultimately beyond the mind, then we can't gain realization or realize truth through understanding. The truth is beyond understanding. So knowledge is applicable. We also want to understand with knowledge through our belief systems how we think about ourselves. Dr. Russ was talking about it a little bit about our belief systems, our negative core beliefs. I don't know if you use that word, but some of the work that we do on our retreats is helping students to understand what their limiting core beliefs are, which from a young age, somewhere along the way, something happened, and as a young child you said to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, or I'm different from everyone else, I'm not the same as everyone else. And this belief system goes throughout our whole life. We aim to prove otherwise, perhaps. That belief system gives us gifts. But what we aim to do on the retreats is to help people see that and then balance it with a more positive belief. I believe neither are true, that I'm not, some days I'm good looking, other days I'm not good looking, some days I'm a kind person, other days I'm a mean person. I don't think I'm either. But in order to create balance in our life, we have to step out of the negative, which is my George. It's my belief system, not good enough, everyone doesn't like me, I know it's too heavy, I'm too serious, no one's listening, they're falling asleep. And then there's what I call lotus, which is the other side, which is in the world but not of the world. not affected by, not held down, and positive and happy and joyful. But I'm neither. I'm really actually the awareness within, is my view, just the awareness of that. And so what I'd highly encourage for everyone to do is just really question, what are your belief systems? What are your belief systems about yourself? What are your belief systems about everyone else? Perhaps every belief you have about yourself and everyone else perhaps is false. Who doesn't judge anyone? Everyone judges people. Do you really know anyone? No, but yet you judge them like you do. I always give the story about the guy that walks outside of his house and he stubs his toe as he walks outside, and then gets a call from his wife and she says, "I'm not coming home, I'm leaving you." And then you walk down the street and you see him and you go, "Hey!" And he goes, "Piss off!" And for the next 20 years you just curse him as a bad fella. Horrible guy, that one. Really mean and nasty. Yet you didn't realise he had a terrible day. But this is what we do. We have these stories about people. We have these stories about ourselves. So understand your belief systems. Understand the knowledge that you've taken on as a kid or as an adult, and what belief that's given you about yourself, about others, about the world. Yeah, you understand your thoughts are then affecting others. Your thoughts are affecting you. Your thoughts are, just mind-driven stuff. And then in doing so, you also then gain, I guess, some clarity about the reality of life, in knowing that you don't know, perhaps. Knowing that your judgments about others aren't real. Knowing that your judgments about yourself aren't real. And perhaps then you can start accepting yourself as you are, as the I am I, as just the being or the awareness. From knowledge comes wisdom. And knowledge practice, put into practice, that experiential knowledge comes wisdom. Wisdom, you could say, is understanding yourself. Yeah, there's wisdom of the world. If I put my hand in fire, I burn it. Yeah, I know that. I'm a wise person. But true wisdom comes from actually knowing yourself. Technically, according to yoga, you cannot know yourself, but you can know who you're not. You can work out who you're not. Wisdom is also the understanding, as I mentioned, about attachment, like the recognition that all is impermanent. If you recognize everything's going to pass, then what's the point of being attached to it? Some people say to me when I talk about non-attachment in class, they come out and they say, "Have you got any kids?" I say, "No." They say, "How can you talk about attachment then?" "Well, I've got a wife and I'm very attached to my wife. I understand attachment." My wife actually once asked me, she goes, "Do you love me anymore since we first got married?" I said, "Well, no. My love hasn't changed. My love is complete. It's there. It's always the same. But my attachment has grown, if that's what you're asking. I've got more attachment for you now, probably. But I recognise what attachment is. But attachment is simply, I consider, ignorance. It's the belief that something's going to last. But nothing lasts. So when you lose your business, or when you lose your friends, or when you lose your family, if you cling on and hold on in the belief that they should have lasted longer, or it should have lasted longer, then what do we get? We get suffering. We get resistance. Whereas if we can just recognise that, Marianne Williams was once asked the question when a woman lost her husband, and she said, "How long is this pain going to last? How long is this suffering going to last?" And she said, "Well, as long as you hold on. For as long as you hold on. When you let go." And I'm not saying suppress feelings by no means. I've had a fair share of death. I've seen death around me in Congo and Africa, and two of my friends had a grenade thrown into their car in Afghanistan. Two good friends of mine just blown up and shot to pieces. And I've found a way, I find, to actually deal with that. For me, the technique I use is actually go and sit in front of my shrine, and I let all the emotions come up, and I feel them, and I embrace them, I honour them, and I pray. I pray for the parents, I pray for the siblings, I pray for the friends of these people, I pray for those people that they may find the light. And I just spend as long as I need to mourn, really mourn. I don't stuff anything down, but let it surface. And it can be for anything, in any loss that you have. It's useful just to sit with those emotions, feel them, observe them. There's no point stuffing them down. And then as a result, we can actually become lighter. We can let them go. Like travelling comfortably on a train, if you're travelling with the luggage on your head, it's not going to be comfortable. You put your luggage down. It's a comfy ride. We travel light, travel comfortably. And so wisdom is the next step of just practicing our knowledge. You know, the difficulty is that we get so much knowledge, we get so many spiritual teachings that we practice this, and oh, this is cool, do a little bit of meditation for a week, and then oh, we get something else. We practice that for a little bit, oh, we get something else, until we're actually spiritually confused, we're not really practicing anything at all. But one truth, according to the Yoga Sutras, is all we need to practice in order to harmonize the mind, in order to find that acceptance of the situation, ourselves and others. Practice one truth. And in doing so, the experiences certainly that I've had in just really being open-minded and practicing some of these teachings is gaining insights, gaining actual deep experience. I wouldn't suggest you need to go to India to find it. What I would suggest is at some point you need to create space for yourself away from the world to actually have the opportunity to feel it, to be in that just state of being, that, you know, that space where you don't have to fill it up with anything. We're compulsive thinkers. There was a survey done, I have no idea who counted this, they say 90,000 thoughts a day is the average. Of 90,000 thoughts a day, like 60,000 are repetitive. So we're literally driving ourselves insane. Yeah, constant nagging thoughts. It should be an opportunity. It could create an opportunity for where we can just sit and just be in that space. I had this opportunity the other night. I had dinner and I missed my friends and ended up sitting there on my own. And normally I'll sit with my wife and friends, and all of a sudden I had no mobile phone either, no magazine or newspaper. I was just sitting there at the table alone. What do I do? And so I realised, hey, this is a great opportunity. I get to practice just being. And I had space, and it was a delightful experience. I think the most joyful experiences I've ever had. My wife doesn't like me hear me saying this, but we're actually just being with myself, just being in myself. Not wanting, not wanting, just being. The most joyful experiences I've ever had. So wisdom comes from practicing knowledge, and from wisdom, I would say, comes love. Can anyone tell me what love is? I'd like to have a try. I guess if you know love, you've achieved love.
Is it a feeling with no conditions?
A feeling without conditions, yeah. Yeah, what sort of feeling?
State of grace.
Warm and fuzzy feeling?
Just a state of grace.
State of grace, yeah. Beautiful way of putting it. Yep, state of grace. Again, grace can be difficult to define, but yeah. Love perhaps cannot be defined. Love perhaps cannot be talked about. I would say any idea you've got of love is not love. Harsh reality. The yogis say the closest thing to pure love is mother's love. Closest thing to pure love is mother's love. So what therefore is pure love? Perhaps it can't be spoken of, but perhaps we can know what it's not. We can know that it's not conditional. Yeah, we know that it's not attachment. You know, if you have a relationship and you think you love your partner, does anyone have that? Does anyone think they love their partner? Be honest. Come on. Tell me, show me hands. Who loves their partner? Is there any wanting? Is there any wanting in that relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah. Generally there is. Generally in a physical relationship there's some form of wanting. They say that,
That's
you know,
how
for
the kids
example...
come about.
Say again?
That's how the kids come
Yeah, that's right. But they actually say that, they say, like, for example, there's different levels of love. Like for me, or for a father, let's say, that goes to bed and he kisses the wife goodnight, he kisses the child goodnight. There's a different level of love. Yeah, kisses the child, but kisses the wife maybe a little, ooh. Yeah. There's a different level. It seems odd, but love seems to, like, what's the word, de-escalate, drop down. Whatever that word is. What's the word? Diminish, yeah. It seems to drop down. Like, we love our family like this much, you know, until we love our partners, and we maybe love our partners a little bit more, maybe family a little bit less, our brothers and sisters, well, they may be down here. Oh, they give us a nice gift. Oh, they might be back up here. And then we love our friends, and we love our friends like down here. And then our friends' friends, well, yeah. And then there's our neighbours. Yeah, maybe. And then there's strangers. Ooh, And then there's that people that said horrible things to you. All these deep levels of love. We have friendship. We have lust. But perhaps love is, like for me, I can't describe love, but the closest thing I can put to it is when two become one. It's that unifying oneness. It's like a mango. I can say I love a mango, but I don't love it when it's on the tree. It's a nice mango, but I actually love it when it hits my lips. Yeah, that moment. Oh, that's when I love the mango. It's when two become one. So perhaps love is actually one. And so perhaps the art of acceptance is actually finding love through understanding knowledge, through gaining wisdom, and then living in love. Start the day with love, spend the day with love, end the day with love. It's a nice mantra to wake up with. How do we start the day? Do we wake up, hey darling, love you. Do we? Or, time to get home today. You gonna leave me in the car? Whatever. Is it possible for us to change our attitude? It will start with knowledge, to inquire deeper. I could tell you some fabulous knowledge. It's just knowledge. Yeah? But there's a beautiful philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a text given, it's one of the ancient texts that's as Krishna discoursed to Arjuna on the battlefield, in fact. Some people ask me what the similarities are with the army and yoga. The similarities is in the army you have a hat badge. It says duty first. If ever you're having a bad day, someone says, read your hat badge. Dry your eyes, read your hat badge. Yeah, okay. Duty first, whereas the philosophy of the Gita is likewise duty first. Perform your duty, but to do it selflessly. To do it without ego, to do it without desire. And the question might arise, well, what's wrong with desire? Like, what's wrong with wanting the fruits of our actions? If you do a hard day's work, what's wrong with wanting to be paid for it? Can anyone tell me? It's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I deserve it. Well, the problem is, and this is the aim of yoga, the philosophy of yoga, is that we need to still the fluctuations of the mind before we can experience that unifying love, that oneness. Whilst the mind lives in duality, it's impossible to experience that. And so if we have desire, if we get what we want, generally, what do we want? More. Greed, disturbance of the mind. Or if we don't get what we want, what do we have? Anger. Again, a disturbance to the mind. So perhaps we can consider this philosophy of the Gita as performing one's actions selflessly. And a way of looking at it is, has anyone got anything on them right here, right now, or even at home, that you've made from scratch? What does that say?
Renovations on both. Building the galley.
Okay, and you grew the tree and you cut the tree, you felled the tree? No. Okay, so, yeah. I'll be surprised no one's got me on that one yet. No. Generally nothing. Like everything on you right now has come from others. Yeah? Everything. So therefore you could consider that you're in debt to others. You could consider that. And so as a way of living your life might be, rather than focusing on me, because I know when I wake up, if I've got like a big week ahead, and I think about, oh man, what do I have to do this week? Oh, what am I going to get for it? And oh, how hard am I going to be? How tired am I going to be? So just thinking about it, I'm exhausted. Just totally exhausted. It's actually one of the tips to getting through your life, actually, I suggest, is just taking moment by moment. Not thinking about what you have to do, just take it moment by moment, step by step. But also, what I realise is, rather, if I wake up in the morning and say, okay, well, what can I do for others today? When I finish teaching yoga often, and my wife works with me on Sundays, and we might have had 150 people thereabouts through the morning sessions of 3 classes, and I say to her, look, we've just served 150 people. And it's not with ego, it's just like, wow, here's this opportunity that what I'm doing, it's not about me, it's for the sake of others. And as we do this, we learn to give up the I, the ego. We give up the want, which is desire. And if you use 3 words, I want peace, you take out the I, you take out the want, you're left with peace. If you want acceptance, you could say exactly the same. I want acceptance. I want to be able to accept myself, I want to be able to accept others. We'll give up the I, which is the sense of individual self, give up the want, which is the desire, and you're left with just that acceptance. So that's a whole lot of words. Let's just say the art of acceptance is knowing yourself, gaining knowledge of who you're not, being yourself, living in a wiser way, living in a greater understanding of reality, rather than a surface level, superficial, mind-driven stuff. And through that, living in love, like really opening your hearts to love and just feeling love and sharing love. And love involves no wanting. Love is unconditional. Love is for everyone. That's why they say that pure love, they call it in yoga bhakti. Has anyone heard the term bhakti yoga? Some may have heard it. Bhakti just means pure love. Some call it devotion, but it's pure love. And so therefore it's, you could say, love for life. Love for life, not just for one person within life, or not just for that part of life, but love for the entire life, which includes yourself. Like the Buddha said, you yourself deserve your love and affection just as much as anyone else. Love yourself, love life within you, love yourself as life. And if you've heard the term namaste, it literally means the life within me honours the life within you. It's that recognition of oneness.